Okay, so I think we're getting ready to do some animation stuff, right? On our, I think at the end we had this like stupid thing. Popping up for adding a new role. I think we had it showing up and then also disappearing. We're going to manage roles, hit add, so this guy pops up. We can type some crap. We hit cancel, it goes away. But we probably want to have it when it pops up that it looks cool, doesn't just pop up like that. We want to have it feel interesting, right? So now, just as a reminder, what did we do last time? When we hit the plus button, we adjust the new role view's frame. Because in view did load, actually, hold on, did we? Oh, we talked about this at the end. I asked the question, how do we move this guy off the screen? And we did this with the cancel button. We said we're just going to move it at -500. So it's still part of this. It's still a subview of the main view, but it's way off the screen now. So what we want to do is maybe add our new role frame as a subview right when the view loads. That way we're not constantly loading as a subview over and over and over again, even though it has no negative impact. So what we're going to do is we're going to set its frame to this. When our view loads. And then we'll say self.view, add subview, new role view. So we'll go ahead and shift it off to the side of the screen, and then I'll go ahead and add this as a subview, and we won't see it. And then what we can do is we don't have to add it as a subview there. When we hit the plus button, we just move it into the frame. So let's see that happen. So we'll see when it first launches, and we go to manage roles. I promise you that new role thing is somewhere out over here. We just can't see it. Okay, so as soon as we hit plus, we adjust the frame immediately, it pops onto the screen. Now, realistically speaking, it actually is probably fairly functional to do it like this, but I want to show us a couple of interesting ways we can do some animation stuff. Go ahead.
Can you try it again, go out of it, and then rebuild it, and try it again?
Go out of it, rebuild it.
Push the play button again, run it again.
Okay, like right now?
Yeah.
What are we trying to accomplish?
I just want to say something. I'm doing the same thing on mine, and there's a glitch.
Just do my thing.
There, before it moves, push it, gets the new view controller on, you can see it.
Yeah.
Oh, did it show up in there? I didn't see.
I was like wondering.
Right when you push it, that button will show up.
Just like the different slides to the.
Oh, here, this is actually interesting. Tell me if you see it this time. All right, so you kind of see how the animations work. We were looking at a viewport, and the viewport is what we see actually on the screen. Now, before, what we did is we hid our view over here. But when this guy slid in, we slid past that first to get this guy in, because this guy came from the right to the left. So now what I did is I put this guy on the other side of the viewport. So we see nothing as he's sliding in. Does that kind of make sense? So we'll shift it to the right side of the screen now. Okay. There's actually something cooler we can do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put it at 020. So we're never going to hide it off the screen, actually. So I'll start off at 020. And then when we hit the plus button, we're not going to move it or anything. When we hit the cancel button, we're not going to move it. It's already exactly where we want it. So now we'll see that we have this completely unusable interface. Because we just have a permanent add role dealy thing going on there. But we don't want to see it initially. So what I'm going to do is on viewDidLoad, I'm going to set new role view.alpha equal to 0. Alpha is the level of transparency. So when it's 1, that means it's opaque. You can completely see it. When it's 0, that means it's invisible. You can completely see through it. Everywhere in between is somewhat translucent, transparent, translucent, and transparent. Okay, so now we'll see that it's still there. Now, but the interesting thing that we have to understand with this is I'll go ahead and hit manage roles. We don't see it. Now, we know it's still here, correct? We just know it's see-through. So the question is, can I hit this plus button? Or is it actually being covered up? I can hit it. So what does that tell us? That tells us when something's alpha is 0, it's as if it's hidden. It's as if it's not there. And actually, I'm kind of interested in something here. So let's do 0.2. I think that should be there enough that we can see it. So now that guy's there technically, so we can't actually hit it. Okay? So we'll start off at 0. And then when we hit the add button, we'll set it to 1. Then when we hit the cancel button, set it back to 0. So this way we're not adjusting the frames all over the place. We're just hiding it or not hiding it. But there is a hidden attribute that we can mess with. But I like the alpha, and you'll see why here in a second. Not there. Now it's there. Now it's not there. Okay? So, and actually let me, you guys have better eyes than me. Let's see if that thing shows up. Like at what point the alpha goes. We should never see it. You ready? You looking for it? Didn't see it? All right, good. Now, what we want to have happen, though, is when we hit the plus button, we'd like to have a nice little animation. And have this guy kind of fade in. Kind of quickly fade in, but fade in. Because that makes our interface seem classy. Right? So we'll review how to do animations. So we'll do animation with, actually I chose I don't need the completion one. Is it the one without completion? I think that's the one. Yeah, there we go. So we're going to do this over 0.5 seconds. And what are we going to do? We're going to set new roles alpha to 1. Okay. So we'll go ahead and run this. Classy.
That's worth the extra 5 cents.
That was classy. That's a 99-cent app at this point.
Pro version.
Okay. And then, when we make it go away, we'll take it back to a 0. Pretty legit. Dave's like,
It's all right.
yeah. By the way, Dean and I are patenting, which translucent chainsaw cello.
Chainsaw what?
Leave
Leave
it.
it.
There's a storyline.
I've already said too much. Okay, so.
There's no protection yet. Can't speak. So what is this all?
A chainsaw cello.
Oh, cello. Okay.
Cello. Like the instrument?
Jello. I was like, what?
Chainsaw jello. That would just be bad for your gums.
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Because you of all people just care completely about health.
I do. Okay, so we want to be able to enter a role name in here, then put it in a description. And right now, our description stuff has a big hard-coded thing in there that they give you a sample text. So we'll go ahead and get that dude out of there. So we'll click on our text view, click on our shield, and here's all that crap filler. Okay, now we're going to want to go ahead and let me actually run this again real quick so I can show you what I'm talking about here. Okay, so we know that we need to enter in a role name here because it's asking us for the role name, and that's kind of our placeholder text, and as soon as we start typing, it disappears. But we don't have the equivalent placeholder text for our text box down here. In fact, we can't even tell there's a text box down here. Can we? So, you know, we kind of know because we wrote it. But we probably need to give it some sort of definition. So we'll click on this guy again. We see in here that we don't have the ability to do placeholder text in this guy. So if we don't have the ability to do placeholder text, what should we go ahead and do so that we know what we need to label this, right? So we have things in our language that allows us to put a label onto something. So we're going to go in here, we'll grab a label, description. We'll go ahead and make this guy have a width of 320. And not an X of 320, a width of 320. It's testing you and you failed, Simon.
Sorry.
So this guy will have an X of 0. And we'll go ahead and center description. All right. And that should be, I think, fairly legit. All right, so we'll put our role name in, and then we'll have our description. But even now, the description box doesn't necessarily seem like seeable. Does that make sense? How might you manipulate this this view so that we can tell that there's a description box there?
Oh, one.
Okay, how? Knowing only what you know how to do now.
Some underscores.
Just surround it with labels. You could do that.
I know how to do it.
Okay,
I guess like a bigger box that's like black.
so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make this guy's width. Let's make it 300. Then we'll go ahead and recenter him here. Now, let's go back here. I don't think that there is, that's not what we want. I don't think there's a border thing. Yeah, there's no border. So what we're going to do is this guy currently has a size of 300 wide, 160 high. So I'm going to take a brand new view. This guy. And we'll drop him on here real quick. And we're going to set this guy to be 320 wide, 160 through 170. X will be 0. This guy has he's at 131. So I just took a view, and I'm going to set this view's background to black for right now. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Editor. Oh, I got to click this guy here. I'm going to send backwards. Send backwards again. And I'll just send to back, I guess. All right, so I put it behind our text view. And then what I'll do is I'm going to just move our description up just slightly. So it's almost like we created a frame around it. Now this isn't awesome looking or anything, but we should be able to at least tell that there is something going on in here. That make sense? Okay, so now we need to go ahead and add our save button, because what does our cancel button do? Our cancel button just makes that guy go away. Save button should probably also make that guy go away, but it should also actually save our new role. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll add a new button down here. Call this guy save. Now, what if we want the save button to be over here and the cancel button to be over here? You can put a bunch of blank buttons, you could do that. But we have this spacer thing here. And the spacer allows us to drag buttons around just by putting the spacer in between them. See how that works? Otherwise, it's a linear layout. You could just keep stacking buttons. So you probably could fake it by just having a bunch of blank buttons. But then what you would probably have is you'd probably have a fairly active toolbar down there where no matter where you touched, things would happen. Like it wouldn't actually call an IV action, but you would like see the little animation of a button clicking, like no matter what you touched on the bottom. So this is the built-in interface for doing that kind of stuff. Now, kind of an interesting thing is when I click on that, notice we have two different ones. We have fixed space and we have flexible space. Fixed space, let's see, how do I want to, well, I'll just describe it. This is not rocket science. When I say fixed space, it will always be this width. When I say flexible space, it's like it's constantly pushing out. And if it can push farther, it will. And where that really comes in handy is with iPad interfaces, where you have something that's this wide when you're holding the iPad one way, and something that's that wide when you hold the iPad the other way. So you can always keep the buttons pushed out to the outside, as an example. So that's where the flexible is. In this case, I can use flexible if I want. In fact, realistically, flexible is probably the more accurate thing to do here. Otherwise, I just kind of guesstimated at what the center was. So now I'm just saying push both buttons out to the edges. So this is probably the more accurate way of saying it. The most bestest. I can't come up with another way that actually seems to be more better. So this is the most bestest. Man, see, Dane and I, we really like that last part there where the add new role is kind of, see what I'm saying? Look at that, look at that. Watch it. It's like magical. Okay, But in any case, we have our buttons now pushed apart, and notice you don't have the stupid little arrow thing in between the two of them. That would be kind of ghetto. Oh, speaking of ghetto. This is pretty funny. I have a picture of it in my phone. So I went into Target on Friday because they were doing the iPad trade-in, where you could trade in even iPad 1s and get $200 in store credit. And they're worth like $5. So anyways, so I went in, I had 3 iPad 1s that I took them with me and got $400 for 2 of them. One of them he wouldn't take because the volume button was kind of like it was kind of damaged. Like you could tell it worked underneath, but you couldn't put volume up. You had to do it all in software. So I'm thinking, okay, well I'm gonna fix this. So I go home, take some needle nose pliers, rip the button off. Just rip the button off. Then I take a toothpick and cut it to size, put it in there as my new button. Then I put Scotch tape over the said toothpick to hold it on there. Then I took a black Sharpie, colored it button color. Totally fixed the button. Totally fixed the button. Went back, stood in line to trade this thing in again. He still wouldn't take it because he said it was a damaged button. But then I turned around, I sold it on eBay. I got $100. Like instantly. I probably could have gotten 150 or 170 for it. But I put it up there for $100. And I mean, it's a functional button. The button works just as well as it worked before. I just fixed it with a toothpick. But wouldn't it have been funny had he taken it in for the $200 repair? But I felt pretty good. The lady who bought it off of eBay, she feels she got a good deal. I told her the button completely worked. She was going to get it fixed. You know, like I took close-up pictures of the button. I could show it after class if you want to see it. But you know, it doesn't look that bad. But she got it for her autistic son or something. But you know, I was my little kind of ghetto fix was pretty funny. 10 minutes, I had that button fixed. So I wonder what could have been had I gone in there with a button repaired professionally beforehand. Would he have taken the trade-in? Because the second time he knew that it, you know, the button had been bad, and I was too lazy to drive to a different Target. All right. So when we hit save, we need to have our role get saved. Well, what does it mean to save a role? At the very minimum for us right now, what does it mean to save a role? It means to ultimately get it into this list view, right? Ideally, we want it saved someplace else too. But let's at least get it into this list view. So we're going to generically say that saving means putting a value somewhere, storing it somewhere. So right now, we're going to go ahead and store it in an NS mutable array, because that's where we save crap. Okay? So we're going to go into our manage roles vc.h. And we're going to create ourselves, not an IV outlet, a NS mutable array pointer called the roles. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a constructor. We could do it in ViewDidLoad for right now, but I have a feeling that we're going to be needing a constructor before long with this guy, right? Because just to kind of give you the path we're going down here, we're going to throw it into an NS mutable array first just to make sure our table view is working. Then we're going to say, hey, well, we should probably store stuff in NS user defaults. But you know what? At the end of the day, we want this thing to be cloud-based. We want to store it in a database somewhere off-site so that if somebody gets their app removed from their device, they can come back in, log in, authenticate with the cloud, and re-get all the roles they've set up. We don't want to have a thing where you drop your phone in a puddle and all of a sudden your entire project management stuff is gone, right? So we're going to look at doing some cloud stuff with a database and talking over a server and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the path we're going down. How many of you have done that stuff out of curiosity? Written an application that talks to a web service somewhere or reads or writes from a MySQL database? Nobody?
Done some stuff.
Okay. That's it? Everybody else, is this be new for you? Okay. So this is good. This is like the, we're going to kind of go through the process of writing an entire application, and you're going to see it's like rinse, lather, repeat. Each page is save crap, retrieve stuff, query stuff, save stuff, update stuff, all that good jazz. And we'll eventually do push notifications as well. So that should be kind of cool. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and write our constructor then, because we know we're going to need one. So we'll just call it init for right now. And we'll go ahead and implement it in the .m file. And every single time we create a constructor, we're going to say self is equal to super.init and ultimately return self. And then we do our extra crap in the middle of that sandwich. And we're going to say the roles is equal to ns mutable array alloc init. So we have an empty ns mutable array right now. Now, remember, we already have a role name text field and a role description text view. For right now, let's just ignore our descriptions, just to kind of get our text view working initially. Okay? So when we hit our save button, which we have not written an IB action for yet, so we need to go back here. Well, yeah, let me do this first. Let's hook up our, no, let me go in the right order. Don't be confused. Just rewind 19 seconds in your head and just pretend. Okay, so we're going to go back to the .h file, and we're going to prototype an IB action. So we're going to create an IB action called new role save button pressed. And again, we're using these kind of verbose names because we may have a different save button on this page or something like that. We're not sure, but let's just be explicit for right now. So we define the IB action inside of the .h. We'll implement it inside the .m. So we'll just throw it right there. And right now we won't do anything in there. And then, so we don't forget, let's go over to the zip file and let's actually hook it up to our save button. Click on File Owner. Here is our new role save button pressed right here. Drag it down to the save button. So now we're all hooked up. So when we hit save, we want to take whatever's in the new role. Well, let me just make sure I'm using the right name of the. The role name text field. We want to take whatever's in there and we want to add it to our the roles mutable array. Now, what happens if they did not enter in a role's name? Do we want to save anything, or do we probably want to scream at them? Scream at them. If you're using this app, how would you expect to be screamed at? Shut down the app, reboot the phone. You will learn your lesson.
That's back to a free app.
All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to first check to see if they entered something in there. So we probably want to look at the length of whatever's currently in role name text field. So if role name text field dot text, that's the text that's currently in there. If that dude's length is equal to 0, so let's just go with this as our check for right now. Technically, they could just put a bunch of spaces in and they'd be cool. So if this guy's length is 0, then we want to do a some kind of alert. So we have something called a UI alert view. So we're going to create one of these guys. So I'm going to say UI alert view pointer AV. And this guy's going to be UI alert view alloc init with title. It's called, let's say the title is new role error. Message, you must enter a role name, exclamation point. Delegate, we'll talk about this here in a second, but for right now I'm just going to put self. Well, here, let's see if you can connect the dots. What is a delegate? Where have we seen the word delegate before? Table views. We have two different things we deal with table views. We deal with data sources and we deal with delegates. What's a data source? Data source would be the data source, right? The crap that the table will show. What's the delegate? Responding to actions. When we click on one of the rows, something like that. Like we were using the delegate methods when we were putting check marks for our dice rolls. Remember all that? Okay, so a delegate are the methods or is the guy responsible for handling events that occur on something. So the delegate associated with an alert view would be the dude who's responsible for handling button clicks associated with an alert view. Now we're not actually going to use one of those yet, but I'll kind of give you an example. So for the cancel button, we're just going to say OK, because the cancel button automatically makes a thing go away. Other button titles, for right now, we're going to say just nil. We have no additional buttons. This is a alert view with a single button on it, which is the cancel button, which automatically just dismisses it. And the cancel button's name, well, what shows up on it is the word OK. All right, so we're just screaming at them. And then we'll say AV show. That's what happens if the length is 0. Else, let's do some saving. All right, but let's go test our alert view. Okay, so we already hooked up our button, our save button to the IB action. So let's go ahead and let's run the application, not put anything into our new role's name, and then hit the button and see what an alert view looks like. It's like, okay, I'm lazy. New role error, you must enter a role name. Okay, that's going to give me another shot at it. Make sense? It's too nice. Well, we can make our own alert view. I mean, is an alert view really that much different than this guy here? I mean, couldn't we, what we just saw, don't we know how to do that now? We could pretty much do that. I mean, we didn't get the darkening in the background and that kind of stuff, but it's actually an interesting question. How would you simulate this?
I would have 2 new views and have one be a semi-opaque background. I'm open at the same time as the text box.
Okay, or have this guy be a subview of that big black view, whatever. So you'd make a view, and we're just going to assume this is a mostly transparent black view. Maybe it's a gray or something like that, but whatever. They've dumbed the alpha down to 0.2 or something like that, so that it's mostly see-through, but it tints everything behind it. So we could approximate this pretty well, couldn't we? No harm, no foul. Okay, so cancel button automatically just goes away. Okay, so now let's just say that we wanted to be able to respond to other button clicks, just for our toolbox. Okay, so I'm going to go into the help, and we're going to look at the documentation. And what we're looking for is UIAlertView Delegate. Because when I say this guy, when I say the delegate for this UIAlertView is self, I'm saying I am taking on that responsibility. Therefore, I must implement, if I would like to respond to this guy, I should implement the AlertViews delegate method or methods. So let's go and look those up. So we're going to go to help documentation. we're going to say UI alert view delegate. So here's one where we can respond to actions. So this one is clicked button at index. And this is what the method looks like. So we'll go ahead and implement that method in here. So I'll just write it right above here. And we'll do a little ns log. And we'll go ahead and put a couple other buttons in here. So you can keep putting buttons in and then just end it with a comma nil at the end. Now, no matter what button we click, it's going to print out here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do %d button index. So we'll see it click based on which button was actually clicked. We'll run this. Manage roles, create this guy, get our pop-up. We see we have multiple buttons now. I'll click on button 1 and we should see, give me a moment. Here, button at index 1 was clicked. Let's go in here again. Let's launch it a second time. We'll hit button 2. Index 2 was clicked. And then we'll hit OK, which is our cancel button. We see that's always index 0. That makes sense? But that's the method that automatically got called because we said that we are the delegate for this particular alert view. So this method receives the alert view that called them as well as which button in that alert view was pressed. So that's how we can respond to those things. That make sense? But usually we will, typically alert views are just for pop-ups to let us know something went wrong. So you usually just use the cancel button to hit OK and move on with life. But just as an example here, this was how we look at delegates for a UI alert view. If we are looking at delegate methods for UI table view delegate, here is that's for the delegate. So the only delegate we've looked at is clicking rows, right? Here, did select row at index path. That's the one we've implemented so far. So every single time we click to put a check mark on or take a check mark off, this was the method that they had already implemented for us. But if we hadn't created our UI view controller to actually be a UI table view controller, which wrote a bunch of these methods for us, we would have had to come in here, find this method, copy it, paste it into our code, and then we would have the delegate methods. That makes sense? And kind of an interesting thing to look at related to that is, I think it's in here. Are none of those methods required? Maybe not. Let me show you the data source ones. UI table view data source. Yeah, so the other ones didn't have any required methods, but notice that data source requires us to write cell for row at index path and also requires us to write number of rows in section. But it does not require us to write number of sections in table view, even though the table view controller provided that method for us. Okay, does that make sense? So these are all the data source stuff you can do. You could have headers and footers and sections. You can have index titles. You can do a bunch of different stuff, but at the end of the day, you're only required to write 2 of them. Okay, so we'll take out this AlertView Delegate because we don't need that here. And we'll also take out our extra buttons. So, if they did enter something in there, then what do we want to do? We want to go ahead and put it into the roles. So we'll say the roles, add object. What object are we adding? We're adding, what's it called? Role name text field.text, so the NS string that came from that guy. Then we want to update our table view. But we need to go ahead and set up our delegate methods first, or our data source methods first. So how many sections are in this guy? We're going to say there's 1. We'll go ahead and remove that warning. How many rows are in this guy? We're going to return the roles count. That's the number of roles that are in there. And then cell for row and index path. Before we return the cell, we're going to say ns string pointer rn for role name is equal to the roles object at index path.row. So that'll get a ns object from the roles at bucket, whatever the current row we're looking at is. Cast that to an ns string pointer, and then we'll say cell dot text label dot text is equal to rn. Okay? So remember, this guy will get called as many times as we have roles. But at this point, we have no roles, because when we first come in, when we first create this view controller, the roles is filled up with an NS mutable array with 0 elements in it. We only get an element in there when we hit save. So in order to have this guy update, we need to give ourselves programmatic access to the table view. So we'll create another IB outlet, UI table view pointer, call this guy TV. We'll go and hook it up. Here's TV, we'll just connect it to our table view. Then, back up by our save button. After we've added something to the roles, we'll say TV reload data, which will take it through the process of updating the fact that the roles count is now 1 greater than it used to be, and then call the roles methods again. That make sense? So we'll hit play. Click manage, manage roles. We'll add something new. We'll call this developer. Hit save. Row. Hit save. Row. Why didn't this go away? It did work. I never told it to go away. So after I reload data, I need to then do what we did inside of our cancel. Actually, I'll just call the cancel. I'll just call that method that dismisses everything. Okay, now, why didn't anything show up in here? Remember, when we first set this up, we created a table view controller, right? But then we immediately changed it to a view controller and deleted the table view. The problem is that we never actually hooked up the data source and delegate outlets. So I'll go back into the zib. click on our table view. We see that he has 2 outlets, neither of which are hooked up. So we're going to drag the data source over to our file owner, and we'll drag the delegate over to our file owner. Now we should have a functioning app. The reason nothing was showing up before is this guy wasn't asking anybody to fill it with data or to listen for his button clicks. He didn't hook himself up to anybody. Click on developer. There's our developer. Click on, oh, we probably want to empty that out too. Designer, put in, so now we have 2 guys in there. Make sense? Okay, so questions about this. For Wednesday, bring your application up to snuff with this one. That is, I'll just give you the quick demo of it so you can watch it at the very end of the video. You should have a main VC that has 4 buttons on it. Only one of them needs to work. That is the manage one. You should have a manage VC that has 4 buttons on it. Only one of them needs to work. That is the manage roles. You should have a manage roles VC that has a table view on it and a plus button. And when you hit that plus button, it brings up the ability to add a new role. It should alpha in like that. You can create a new role name, hit save, and it should add it to your list here. Similarly, if it's empty and you hit save, it should give you a pop-up. That make sense? All right, so I'll add that to Angel, but make sure you look at the last 5 minutes of this video or whatever to follow what you need to do. Okay? I'll see everybody on Wednesday.
Oh, we're getting one.
You would have let me get away with that?